Hi everybody, and my name is Catherine, just Catherine. And for those of you who know me, I've just attended a 10-day Vipassana meditation course in Alberta, Canada. And this is a video for me to produce my experiences, to tell people about my experiences, and hopefully to pass on the benefits of Vipassana and about the things I've learned so that it can help those who are considering the journey of Vipassana, or perhaps they are a little bit lost in their current situation and needing to find a way to discover themselves or learning a bit more about life. So hopefully this video will be informative for you to make decisions. So what I'm going to talk about is firstly, briefly introduce what Vipassana is. Then I will talk about the course itself, what it comprises of. Number 3, my experiences and what I have learnt. And fourth, what my life is like now after Vipassana. And lastly, some tips. So, Vipassana is a 10-day silent meditation course. I wouldn't call it a retreat like some people refer it to, just because it's definitely not a retreat where you can just do whatever you want and meditate, whenever you want, or join the course like at your convenience. It's very regimented, and you do have to live without a lot of personal comforts which we are so used to in our day-to-day lives. So I would prefer to refer it to as a course. And there are a number of Vipassana centres worldwide, including the UK. However, circumstances in my personal situation has brought me to attend the course in Canada. So I am very grateful for that opportunity. It for me initially was a very daunting experience, just the thought of not having the daily comforts such as my phone and not be able to speak and not exercise. However, I was glad that I did it because it was an eye-opening experience and it completely changed my life, and that it allowed me to see things differently, and it helped me to understand more about myself and how my mind works. So moving forward, I can use these tools to be able to assist me in making better decisions about for myself, and so that I don't keep on learning some painful, sometimes expensive mistakes. However, learning mistakes is also part of the journey, so it cannot be completely avoided. So prior for me to go onto the course, I was in a really poor state of mental health and work-related stress. I've never ever taken time off work before, ever, in like the 40 years I've been alive. And it was a combination of accumulative stress over the years on top of unhelpful mindsets formed from previous experiences and traumas that became unleashed when I suddenly realized somewhere down the line that there must be more to the life that I was living. And all of a sudden I realized, my God, my current situation does not serve me, but I do not know what to do about it. So I was kind of spinning my wheels and just allowing things to happen, but I continued to react in a negative way despite doing a lot of gratitude practice, law of attraction. Some of you may have known about these sort of techniques, but they weren't working because I was still very deeply unhappy about myself and my life. Again, those of you who may know me, that on the outside I was fine, I was eating healthily, exercising regularly, and I practiced positive thinking alongside a variety of other spiritual and self-help techniques that are out there and that were bombarding my smartphone on a day-to-day basis. However, I wasn't realizing that these were all just distraction tools that only temporarily took me away and from thinking about my problems, and it relieved the symptoms of stress. But whenever a challenging situation arose, I would end up reacting and judging, which resulted in creating harmful energies within my body that led me to burnout and fatigue. Eventually, I had to take some time out from work, and having this opportunity ignited my motivation to sign up to attend the Vipassana course, whom I was initially introduced to by a good friend of mine a few years ago. So I'm so glad I did it, because it was not only healing to have some time away from the busyness of modern day living, digital clutter, and negativity of daily grime, but to learn something new, and also being able to travel for the first time in 4 years were the catalyst to feed into my motivation to make the most out of it. So without further ado, let's get on to the next section by briefly explaining what is Vipassana. So what is Vipassana? The description I'm going to be able to give is kind of taken from an extract of a video, which I have put a link in the description of this clip, because it gives a better explanation and more detailed explanation of what Vipassana is in simple terms. So Vipassana is an ancient meditation technique that was taught around about 2,500 years ago by a guy called Siddhartha Gautama, and most commonly known as the Buddha. He taught many other techniques, but Vipassana is said to be the most direct path to realization and liberation from suffering, which is also the suffering of the human mind. Vipassana means to see things as they are, and is also known as insight meditation, where you observe the reality and your mind from moment to moment without judgment or attachment. Vipassana is a technique of a self-observation, leading a person to see the three universal truths of 1. Impermanence, 2. Egolessness, and 3. Unsatisfactoriness. It is the experience of all these three truths that purifies the mind and eradicates suffering. Now, the law of impermanence is what Vipassana focuses on, in that everything that we'll ever know or experience is impermanent and is always changing. The law of nature is always changing, such as day and night, sun and the moon, the seasons, the weather, and that can lead to also as human beings we changing, because we're not the same as when we were born. And as you get older, your body always changing, cells always renewing. So the idea is that nothing is ever permanent in this world as we know it, or as we see it. And therefore, by forming attachments or aversions, basically aversions means to run away or avoid, people, events, material goods, objects, emotions, sensations, or any other mind or matter, we create suffering within us as we continuously form habits that either leads to craving for these things, or that makes us feel good, or avoid these things that are making us feel bad. There is a more detailed video, as I said before, that can explain this in a further detail. So the link is in the descriptions below. So what drawn me to Vipassana were the characteristics in helping one find themselves through observation and to understand what is the truth. Or sometimes, answer the question, what is the purpose of my life? The big question, which can also be kind of being talked about in many other religions, and I'm sure that many other religions would have some form of these questions and trying to answer them. I thought I always knew myself, and that I know what I like and I don't like. I know the work that I'd enjoyed, my passions, etc. But somehow the things that I really liked, say 20 years ago, no longer have the same enjoyment now. And I always seem to be changing from job to job, hobby to hobby, moving from place to place, and I'll never seem to be stable. This would actually often frustrate me, because I was kind of frustrated as to why am I not like everybody else, holding down a stable job. And I was actually quite scared to move on once I had a stable job, because I was attached to the idea of stability. which I'm sure that many people watching this video may agree that stability, security is actually quite an important part of their lives. And I would actually force myself to suffer by staying in an unhappy situation for the sake of stability, but I remain unhappy and unfulfilled. So again, a classic job is staying in a job that you don't like, but for the sake of security of income, some people would end up just staying there for years just because they're scared of moving away from that comfort zone. And likewise, same as marriages and relationships. So for me, as a coping mechanism to relieve the dissatisfaction of staying in my unhappy job, and for the sake of regular income, I would then either go out for a long run, hit the gym to boost my endorphins, or treat myself with wine, food, luxury goods, etc. But not knowing that all of this was just temporary relief of the suffering that was actually happening deep inside me. And pretty much taking taking medication to relieve a symptom of an illness rather than using surgery to remove a long-term illness, because that is painful and that have complications and takes time. So we tend to take the quick and easy route. However, as I said, as I explained before in the introduction, fate has brought me to attend the Vipassana Center in Alberta, Canada. So the next section I'm going to talk about is what the course consists of. So now I'm going to talk about the course structure. For anyone new to Vipassana, the first course is always 10 days for new students, and you actually stay there for 11 days, because on the last day, day 11, you would stay around to about lunchtime to help clean up, etc., before sending yourself away to freedom again. So the idea of having a 10-day course is to allow students to get used to the idea of surrendering their daily comforts and to live pretty much like a monk for 10 days, and also to allow the student to settle and get used to the techniques and to practice. So it's actually a good way to introduce and somebody who's, specifically if they are very rigid in certain ideas about meditation and their behaviors. So yeah, definitely a 10-day course is a good one for new students. A lot of people say, oh, 10 days too long, it's only 3-day courses, but the problem is that if you just do 3 days, it doesn't give you enough time to actually absorb and understand the technique in itself, which can be quite in depth. So definitely a 10-day course is always going to be for new students. And prior to the course begins, they will send you in an email talking about 5 precepts which students should observe at least throughout the course, but they send it to you so that you can get used to the idea of these 5 conducts that you need to be able to stick to throughout the period. So they're called the 5 precepts, and also known as Shila in the language, in the Sanskrit language. And so the first precept is no killing. So this includes no killing of bugs, insects, and you would refrain from eating meat, fish, or poultry. Number 2 is no stealing. 3 is no speaking lies. 4 is refrain from sexual activities. That is definitely going to be the case during the course. But when you said that, you kind of need to observe these 5 precepts after the course, but that would mean no sexual misconduct as the actual rule after. So it doesn't mean that, okay, you've done a Vipassana course, you want to maintain to be a Vipassana practitioner, but you can never have sex with a partner again. So it's not like that. So don't worry for those of you who are looking to have those connections still. But anyway, the men and women during the course are separated. That means they include accommodation, dining area, and also the walking areas. The only time they're kind of mixed together is in the hall, in the meditation hall, when they do their group sits. But however, they will still be sitting in their respective sides. So it'll be one side for the women and one side for the men during the course. And the last one is refrain from taking intoxicants. This includes alcohol and tobacco. So definitely it's not a good idea to try to take some intoxicants in or sneak them in. They don't really search your bags, but again, it's about integrity, and you need to get the most out of the course. You shouldn't really be intoxicated, which can affect your progress. So yeah, so if you want a massive detox of all yourself, and including diet, health, and being clean for like 10 days, this is definitely a good bonus one, to go on to if you want to motivate yourself even further. And so apart from the 5 precepts, the students also reminded to observe the practice of noble silence. This means absolutely no forms of communication are allowed between students and servers in the form of speaking, writing, gesturing, or even eye contact. You are allowed to speak to the managers. So within each, so you've got a female manager, a male manager. So these are the people that you can go to if you're having problems directly, but you should not speak to any other students. We're then required to, upon registration of the course on day 0, we're required to hand in any electronic devices that have access to the internet, radio, iPods, MP3 players, Kindles, TVs, any books, magazines, reading and writing materials, and these are kind of kept safe in a little bag until the course finishes. Again, they don't check your bags, so you can hand in whatever you feel comfortable in handing in. But again, going back to the integrity aspects, you are there to learn about this technique. You are there to, again, to be truthful and to be honest. So if you're going to cheat by bringing your phones in, then you're not going to get the most out of the course, and it's kind of a bit wasted, really, So I'll definitely just hand everything in, just makes your life a lot easier. We are all instructed that also to not use any scented toiletries, perfumes, or deodorants, and we are advised to use unscented products that they have on site. We are also not permitted to do any form of exercise apart from walking, which there are designated walking areas on the site during break times. So you can, we get about 3 break times throughout the day. Also, obviously, in the evening where you finish your kind of task for the day, so you can just go walking around. It was pretty much, a walking track, about 400 meters round. So for me, I kind of just walked round and round and round and round every break time, trying to get my steps in. But, it can get a bit quite mundane. But like I said, when you've got nothing to do and that's only exercise you're going to get, then, you're going to make the most of it. So the idea behind these restrictions is that you do not create distractions by the means of enticing your senses for yourself and other students, because by enticing your senses you can block your progress on learning the technique, as it can arouse thoughts leading to emotions, and that can prevent you to see things as it is. So the less active your senses are, the easier it is for you to really go deep within yourself. So let's go on to the timetable. So the timetable is pretty set every day, with a slight adjustment on day 4, as you would be doing like a 2-hour meditation and instruction session to learn the technique of Vipassana. So I'm going to show you what the timetable looks like here. So I kind of hand drawn the timetable here. So we kind of start out getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and then between 4:30 to 6:30 you have your meditation in your room or in the hall. So there are quite a few sessions throughout the day where you can just meditate in your own space. And then you have your breakfast at 6:30 to 8:30, so you get a chance to have a walk around after that as well, and do your laundry if you need to do your laundry. And the group set, so you have your group set meditation, that's always an hour, and that means everyone has to be in the hall, and that's where you're really going to practice your meditation properly, where you kind of try not to move and all that stuff. So the group sets kind of happens 4 times a day, so 3.5. So an hour here, an hour in the afternoon at 2:30 to 3:30, and then the one in the evening at 6 to 7. And then you have one about 40 minutes right at the end, just before you retire, at about 20 past 8 in the evening until 9. And then you kind of finish your day by about 9 o'clock. So again, meal times is 11 o'clock for your lunch, 8:30 for your breakfast, and you have 5 for tea, which is mainly just fruit and tea if you're a new student. If you are old student, so after you've done your 10-day course and you go back to do another course, you're only allowed to have tea with no milk. I don't know why, but apparently, you know, I think it's the idea of trying to, because you're old student, you need to improve your practice by adding like a certain layer of restrictions on top to make it harder for you. So that's why older students, when they go back, they always tend to have a longer, deeper practice, much more advanced than what they would learn on the first course. So that's pretty much the timetable. So like this structure, so from day 1 to day 3, so the first sort of 3 days, you learn a technique called samadhi, which is a word for concentration. So they kind of get you to focus on your breath, and you're observing your breath without sort of changing it. So just observe it and just see it as it is. And then you'll concentrate the breath like in and around the area of your nose. So like over the first 3 days, you tend to sort of, you know, do one technique where you just do up and down in around the nose, and then the third day where you just kind of focus on the part between upper lip and the lower part of your nose. So the idea, you kind of home in on your concentration to a much smaller area over time, and this is basically to sharpen the mind and increase your sensitivity. And on day 4, and you'll learn the actual Vipassana technique, which is like a body scan, where you observe the sensations from one body part to the next. And the teaching to structure to do the body scan was like a full 2 hour, where you are not allowed to leave the hall for 2 hours. And you know, although there is stuff you can listen to, like in a way that, you know, you wouldn't be just sitting there for 2 hours by yourself. You listen to instructions of the teacher, which is the founder of Vipassana Goenka. He would obviously tell you which part to observe. But because, you know, it was such a long set, and I do have like an overactive bladder, and I do need to go to the toilet quite often, that 2 hours was a killer for me. I was like dying for the loo. But I'll talk about that in my next part of the video about my own experiences. So then from day 5 to day 9, you continue to practice the Vipassana meditation, what you've been taught from day 4, and then different instructions will be given on each day to kind of expand the practice. So you'll do your body scan in a different way and a different order, and so it kind of really helps you to hone in on how to use it to the benefit of what you're experiencing. You might want to just go back to your samadhi, your concentration, focus on the breath if you feel like your mind is agitated. So yeah, so you have all this tool to play with, which is, it does make the hour go a lot quicker when you kind of got something to work on. I mean, I wouldn't say kind of like something to focus on, because again, you're trying to distract your mind rather than observing it what it is, but at least you have a technique to use, so rather than thinking about the time, you know, you just really focus on yourself, which is great. And then on day 10, you'll break silence after the morning group sit, after 9 o'clock in the morning, as you slowly adjust back to normal communication. So they would have display boards in the dining hall where they talk about the history of Vipassana, and like they show you lots of pamphlets and books, and also like a donation table to talk about, you know, the future of Vipassana and what, you know, students can do to offer and to give a service. And yeah, so this is where we start to talk amongst ourselves, you know, talk about get to know the other students, because instead of 10 days you've been together, you probably know nothing about them at all. So it's interesting to talk about like the preconceptions you had and to compare comparisons, which is brilliant. I love that part of the course, the best part of the course. But you will still need to do the group meditation on that day as well. So just because you're talking, but you definitely still need to observe silence when you're doing your meditation in the hall. And then day 11, you'll have your breakfast and you clean like your room, the block, and then help to clean up the kitchen area, and then you can pack up and leave. So the course is actually completely free, believe it or not. Yeah, completely free. Yeah, you heard the word free. And you would only be invited to give a donation once you've done your 10 days. So on day 10, they will talk about their work, and then you can have the opportunity to leave a donation should you want to. And you get basically what you get for your course is you get accommodation and food completely all inclusive. The travel will be one big issue if you're looking to go to a Vipassana center that is a bit difficult to get to, which does rely on, car. Where I went to in Canada, in Alberta, where the center is, like 3 hour drive from the nearest city, and there was no public transport to go there, so you kind of really have to rely on the ride share that you would apply for to be there and to be able to stay on the course. So they also have a ride shared board. So what they will do is that once you've been confirmed to attend the course, you can put yourself up as, whether you want to give a lift or you need a lift. So you can just contact the people that are offering lift directly to arrange the transport between yourselves. And we do bear in mind that actually if the person that you catch in the lift with and they end up leaving the course halfway through, then you might just have to make sure you find a lift back. But it's always easier that way because there'll be teachers and servers there that would, that you may not necessarily go there with, but if you don't have a lift, I'm sure that one of them will be happy to give a lift to where you need to go. The current teaching of Vipassana is founded by a guy called S.N. Goenka. Although the Vipassana technique was taught by the Buddha, the Goenka, who was born in Burma from an Indian business family, he was originally a student of Vipassana and decided to set up centers all over the world to help to spread the teaching of Vipassana / Dharma. And all the instructions were given via an audio recording of Goenka. And during those meditation instructions, there was no video, so you have to listen to him and talking you through. And at the end of the day, we do what's called an evening discourse. We watched like an hour and 15 minutes long video of Goenka talking about the experiences which you may or may not have experienced. And he will also give you like lots of stories and to kind of give you like analogy of certain parts of meditation and sometimes parts of life, which is wonderful. Although it's a very long day at the end where you do your group meditation for an hour and then you're gonna have 5 minute break to go to the toilet, come straight back, an hour and 20 minutes of Goenka talking, and you sit another 40 minutes of meditation after that. So the end of each day, like from 6 o'clock onwards, can be quite draining, especially where all you had was like a fruit and tea like at 5 o'clock. You don't get a chance to eat at all until the next morning. So those of you who are going on the course, and you'll probably find that period, especially the first 3 or 4 days, will be quite difficult to sustain in a way that you think, oh, I'm so hungry, I just want to eat something, and because you can't actually just get tea whenever you want to. You're only allowed tea. You're only allowed in the kitchen dining area, like during dining times. So that can be difficult. However, like I said, nothing is ever permanent. Things are always changing, so those cravings will eventually subside only if you allow it to. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about my experiences on the Vipassana course. So when I first heard about Vipassana a few years ago, I was kind of put off by the idea of not exercising for 10 days, as I'm naturally an active person and I was regularly doing races and fitness challenges every year. So it was very hard for me to give up the idea of not exercising for 10 days, which would have killed me. However, life situations kind of drives you down a certain path, and naturally, despite it can be quite uncomfortable to initially surrender, but I think when the time came, those attachments become less and less important, and you kind of realize, you know what, it's only 10 days, it's not for the rest of your life. And I'm sure that you can do some sort of stretches as a way to move your body, and you can also go for walks. So it wasn't as bad, at the time when I was ready to go on the Vipassana journey. I was quite lucky I had my own room, and the course did allow you to do some stretches in your own room, but not in public spaces. So I did a number of stretch routines, which I use on a regular basis, and some core strengthening exercises, just because there's lots of sitting down, and because of my scoliosis, I do need to do some sort of strengthening exercises on the back and certain parts of the body, so that I don't end up becoming worse than my symptoms of scoliosis. So I felt that was kind of justified. I think it's just knowing the difference between intense exercises that distract you away from your meditation, and it can also make you tired as well. So if you do a lot of exercise when you try to meditate, one of the things you'll probably end up doing is just falling asleep as soon as you get a chance to rest your mind. So I totally understand why exercise wasn't allowed, and I think knowing the difference, it really helps you to understand actually it's not like you can't do anything at all. You have to sit there for almost 8 hours a day. But it's about understanding that. So actually I kind of made use of the walking times, which were around break time. So after your breakfast, your lunch, your tea break, and perhaps in the evening just before you go to bed and after everything's finished. So I was racking up about 18,000 to 20,000 steps a day, which I suppose is better than nothing at all, which is probably more steps I would normally do if I was at home or doing my own regular routine. So yeah, it wasn't that bad. I knew I was going on this pilgrimage actually when I got accepted on this course. I mean, it was a relief for me to be able to go after many failed attempts at trying to apply for another centre. But so therefore I was mentally prepared actually although I did not have any idea of what to expect on the course. I tried to look up some YouTube videos to see if I could get an insight into the experiences of others, but there wasn't actually that many. And however, the ones that were talking about personal experiences were really helpful. On the Vipassana website, or also known as Dharma, Dhamma, it recommended for those intending to take the course for the first time to not have any preconceived ideas or to mix up any other meditation practices, should you have one, because this is to ensure that it give the Vipassana technique a fair chance to see whether it's effective. So if you mix up with other techniques, then all of a sudden you had an improvement. You wouldn't know whether it's a Vipassana that's actually making you feel better or improving you, or is it the other technique that you used. So I actually didn't intentionally look up too much stuff on there, because I suppose if you read too much about anything, then you've already gained a preconceived idea of what it actually is. So you go in with that. So it's harder for you to surrender at the course. So it's going to be harder for you to relax and ease yourself into the restrictions and the timetables, etc. So I kind of just allowed my experiences to unfold, and I think that's probably was the best way to get through the course. It's just to go in and not have any expectations and just allow your experiences to come one after the other, and then you can sort of reflect back on that. And I also felt it was very useful to take the course in another country, as it reduced the temptation to leave halfway through. So, if I was in the UK, if I didn't feel like, okay, the first day was awful, so I could just get my car and leave there. But if you're in another country, there's no way you can do that. So yeah, I felt that was a good one actually. And also, if you're in another country, you probably feel a bit more relaxed because you're kind of a bit of half on holiday. So it's a different type of adventure and experience. Canada at the time was a couple of months behind the UK in terms of lifting the COVID restrictions. So the course still had to limit the number of students in order to maintain the social distancing. Therefore, I was quite lucky that the course wasn't too crowded with a lot of people, which it can sometimes be, up to about 80 people per course during normal restrictions, or sort of during normal opening times. I was accommodated in a room on the first floor of a wing designated to female students. So there was only one other girl on that floor, which she also had her own room. How unfortunately she quit after the first day. So I kind of had a whole floor to myself with my own bathroom just literally just outside my room. So was kind of a bit like an ensuite in a sense, for 10 days. So that's pretty cool. And the food were really lovely. They're all freshly cooked, made by the servers every day, whom are also previous Vipassana students, and they would volunteer their time as a server as part of their donation. The food was all mainly vegan with some options for vegetarian if you want to add cheese or milk on the side. The quality of the food was top notch, for it being a free center, like a free course. I was very surprised by the quality of food. It was nutritious and healthy, easily digestible. So the idea, I think the recipes and the kind of food you have for a particular day would kind of marry up with what you'd be doing. So for all meditation food, you shouldn't have anything that's really heavy or stodgy or oily. So they all kind of like very like they all like carbs, lots of vegetables, maybe a moderate amount of protein and lots of fruit. So yeah, it's brilliant. We only get tea and fruit at 5 o'clock as our last refreshment. So the main meal would normally be around lunchtime, which is at 11 o'clock. And then, like I said, that would be your last. So you have quite a substantial meal at that time, and then you'll have a lighter sort of snack in the evening. It was kind of hard to get over the hunger to start with, as I wouldn't be eating until 6:30 in the morning from 5. So you effectively fasting for say 12 to 13 hours. But again, using the practice of Vipassana, the hunger would eventually subside. Again, that is kind of your craving, try to, speak to you, say, well, feed me, feed me, feed me, and become this uncontrollable eating machine. So once you kind of use Vipassana to cope with those difficult, discomfort feelings, then the hunger no longer kind of didn't exist. So during the evening, I think the first 4 days I was really hungry by about 8 o'clock, and then you had to sit through another meditation before going to bed. I mean, that was very hard to adjust. So yeah, so I kind of sat there and I wish I was just taking like an apple from lunchtime to sneak into my room so that I can have something to eat at night time. But again, I think after the 5th, 6th day, you get used to it, and it wasn't such of an issue in the end. So yeah, live with it, as they say. And there were a number of irritations and agitations, discomfort for the meditation perspective for the first 2 days of my meditation. And because I have scoliosis, and I've never meditated for like longer than 10 minutes, but the fact that we couldn't actually speak, it naturally helped me to center my thoughts, and I continued to find other ways to find a posture that was more comfortable for me. It was a lot of trial and error, practicing what works and what doesn't work. There were some times where would have a very successful meditation where I was focused and I did not move, but then there were like the next sitting I could be completely the opposite. And there were also opportunities to ask the assistant teachers questions at set times during the day. So that was helpful to clarify any misunderstandings that I had about the technique. And I think the main important thing to remember is that, for me to take away was that, just because I had a good meditation for one period, it doesn't last forever. Like I said, it's like law of change, law of impermanence. And then the next one can be very uncomfortable. So try not to get too caught up with the feeling of, yes, I've done it, that's it, and I can do this forever and ever. And I think we can also get caught up with this idea in our daily lives about success. So we can be very successful in one part of our career, but then as time moves on, things change, and then it become more and more challenging to keep up with that pace of work that you were doing before to gain that success. And when things don't work out the way that we want to, we become frustrated because we think it's the end of the world. So yeah, so that was a very good learning experience for me in that side of things, to take away and into my working world and into my daily lives, to remind me that change is never the same. Change is always happening, and nothing's ever staying the same ever. And there was also in extraordinary ways, there will be some questions that I also wanted to ask the next day to the teacher about my meditation, but somehow answers kind of manifested itself in my next meditation before my question with the teacher. And also during the discourse, Goenka, which is the guy who was the main teacher of Vipassana, there's a video of him talking about, the experiences of the student each day, what you would expect or what you wouldn't expect. And he would kind of identify the issues that I had experienced earlier and gave some guidance on it, which was quite incredible because those recordings were probably from around the 80s or the 90s. I'm not sure. I'm just guessing, to be honest. I'm not sure when they're recorded, but I think I heard that they were recorded quite some time ago. So do correct me if I'm wrong. But he also actually passed away back in 2013. So there's this guy, from recording from like 20, 30 years ago, speaking to me about my experiences. Well, not me personally, but talking about it. And I just think, how does he know that I was actually having exactly the same issues, a couple of days before, the day before? So that was quite incredible for me. And challenges wise, day 4 was one of the toughest days for me. Sitting in the hall for 2 hours, concentrating was very, very hard. And I was dying to go to the toilet, but I didn't know what to do because I thought I must force myself to not go and stay all the way. But at the same time, was so uncomfortable that I ended up crying. Despite I was able to hold on, but after the bell went and I was able to leave without break, I was suffering. All the emotions just fly out of me basically. And I was later encouraged actually to not confuse with discipline and forcing. So discipline to not move or fidget is very different to forcing one to be in pain or to ignore biological responses in the body. So after this, I became more compassionate with myself and I stopped comparing my progress with the others around me. And they seemed to be appearing for sitting a long time and they were doing the meditation for 2 hours, during in the hall, even after we didn't have to. And then I just wanted, okay, as soon as we get to meditate in our own room, I'm going to just run into my room and just lie down for like 2 hours. But again, I stopped comparing myself with the others and it's just set my own bar as to, what can I achieve today? Even if just like 5 minutes more than the day before, that is like a major improvement for me. And it was, from this point that I began to realize my limits and I accepted them rather than being frustrated with myself or trying to force progress. So I was so used to doing as a means of false reality to success. So before success was actually my craving. I tried to do challenges, to prove myself and sometimes to prove to the others, hey, I can do this, but in the end I was just hurting myself and I was never happy. So that was another good learning point for me. And there were days which were perfectly easy and the hour went very quickly. But then I was taught not to get too attached to this improvement as it can change, as I explained before. And there'd be some days where my mind was very fidgety and sometimes I was tired, I just keep like doing the noddy dog type thing. We were taught that our mind forms habit patterns as a result of experiencing an event, so which causes a reaction. And this reaction, either craving or aversion, can become stronger as we continue to react each time as a situation arises. And it creates an energy ball called sankharas. So sankharas are what chains one to suffering. And in order to eradicate this sankhara, we remain observant and do not attach emotions or thought to it or feed the emotions or thought to it, because sankharas grows by feeding on our emotions and our thoughts and our attachments, and over time this particular sankhara loses its strength and it will evaporate. And once one sankhara is eradicated and more deeper sankharas come to the surface, and we continue to practice Vipassana to eradicate them until there's no sankharas left, and that's how you become purified and hopefully you be on the path to enlightenment. So that's the idea of what Vipassana is trying to do. And over our lifetime, as the older we are and the more sankharas would normally get built up if we have not had practice of Vipassana. So we may not know all that there were sankharas that like embedded deep down inside, you know, from very, very young age. But because we did a lot of things to distract ourselves, such as, I don't know, like think about our careers and other things to keep ourselves busy, and we kind of just didn't realize they were there. And I think once they start to come up, you actually don't realize it until a situation kind of allow you to think a certain way that trigger certain emotions, and that's when they can manifest itself without warning. So we just have to be constantly aware of that. And I have many sankharas, and one of them was to do with bullying in childhood. So I was so upset that by my coping mechanism and a way to gain confidence from bullying was to focus hard on achieving success through academic studies, work, sports, etc. And by successfully achieving something was actually creating a false reality, as once I have achieved something, I'll be hungry for the next challenge. And I could be so obsessed about doing well that I would sacrifice many things in order to achieve it. But you know, when was enough? That was a question. You know, actually nothing was ever enough, because when I'd done a challenge, I would go for the next. But I wasn't really think about the root cause of the problem is about my emotions to do with bullying. So so those things would tend to come up actually at work, where, you know, I'll get bullied at work from a colleague or manager or something, and I would just do another challenge to make myself feel better. And I would move from job to job, always experience the same thing. And now I understand why that is. And one day during one of my walks, a lunch break, I would think about that sankharas. Was after all the trauma I had with, you know, sitting for 2 hours. I was really angry with myself, and all the emotions start to come out. And then I realised, actually, hey, I need to calm down a bit and just sit with it and allow it to go. I would just I just started to think about back in when I was a child, and a situation that caused me an upset. And you know, before the course, I would think about it, and it would actually really hurt me. And I would, however, I just had a thought during my walks, and you know, it had no longer an effect on me. You know, I was really thinking about it a lot, but actually, it was like I didn't, you know, I mean, it doesn't upset me anymore, because I decided to disassociate myself with those emotions. And it just like, well, like, whew, this, you know, liberation from my shoulders was just making me so happy. And I was walking around smiling for no reason, but feeling that I was very light and kind of liberated in some sense. So, you know, I had an experience of what that feels like to get rid of a sankhara. But I know that there are many more, so you know, so it's a work in progress. But at least I know what that journey is like at one point. So that's definitely one of the best things I've learned on the Vipassana course. And yeah, I mean, so that's pretty much my experience throughout the course. And I mean, towards the end, like the course, we had like another group sit meditation. And my thought was, oh, it's my last meditation. I've got to do really well. I have to sit still, not move, and get a perfect hour. But actually, by having preconceived thoughts or goals, it actually kind of made me more disappointed, because my mind was like completely agitated. I was moving, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm moving, and what is going on? So the more I hold on to those, you know, frustrations, the kind of worse it got. So actually, I just have to remind myself to pull back from it every time my mind runs away to thinking those things. And just again, you know, having more compassion and love and maintaining equanimity. And, you know, just understand that I said things are always changing. Cool. So the next clip I'm going to talk about is the life now after I've done my course, and how it's changed my life, or what I can bring forward to. So life now after the Vipassana course. It's been around 15 days since I finished the course, and just over a week back from Canada. The recommendations for the continuous practice are that we meditate 1 hour in the morning and 1 hour in the evening every day as a minimum. And then you should attend a weekly group sitting meditation, and either serve or attend a 10-day Vipassana course once a year. Initially, my feelings after 10 days of solid meditation without my normal routine were that meditation was the last thing that I want to do. Having had a reflection though of these thoughts, I realized that some of my previous habits were unhelpful. So by immediately wanting to go back to these habits were actually my cravings at play. So Vipassana meditation really taught me to become aware of myself and the sensitivity to physiological changes such as breath, heart rate, mind racing. So those sort of symptoms you associate with stress. I noticed when I skipped a day of meditation, I find myself drawn to those negativity of life much easier. And whenever I found myself starting to react, I have to make an effort to draw back and observe my sensations. But when I did start to practice a daily meditation for, say, 20 to 45 minutes, I could technically only really realistically manage once a day, to be honest. But just by doing at least one session of meditation, I found myself a lot calmer and I was easier to ground despite outside situations can be stressful and alarming. And I also noticed that regular Vipassana practice has helped me to understand the true values of my inner being and what are the real important aspects of life that really matters. And this also has helped me to identify certain values, and by identifying them, it helps me to make better decisions that are aligned with who I really am. It has also helped me to sharpen my intuition, and I'm beginning to gain confidence by being comfortable with making my own decisions, even though it may not appear to be plausible in the eyes of others. But however, I no longer need to feel validated by others' opinions, and as I know that my truth is going to be different from other people's, and my own experiences and what's right for me is going to be independent from other people's judgments. And as long as these decisions that I make do not harm anyone or myself, and I'll continue to observe the 5 precepts and the 10 values of Vipassana, then I can live life in a much more peaceful and abundant way, I'd say. And although Vipassana practice is a daily must, I'm still just on the beginning of the path. And I feel like there's a sense of liberation as I now have a light to guide me on the path. Now, developing compassion, love, and understanding for myself and others who may not have understood the benefits of Vipassana, and maintaining these qualities even in the midst of chaos, are what I aim to achieve. But again, without expectations of forcing these to happen, I just have to allow this experience to unfold itself. And sometimes it might manifest in ways which I don't expect. So again, it's just all about the fascinating surprise of nature when it comes at play. But what I can always work on is what's here and what's going on here. And I said by being in tune with nature is very important. So I feel like regular walks in nature, parks, forests, or sea, or even during undesirable weather to connect with energies of the earth will help you to build that relationship and to maintain that relationship with what is actually real. And also doing regular yoga practice, it's very compatible with Vipassana. And I started doing a bit more of that. Before I was doing some, but it was like hit and miss. It just depends on how I feel at the time. But I realized that I was doing actually a lot of yoga in my room during my course, and I found that without any music or any videos, so I have to kind of just do it on my own. Allows me to connect better with myself. So I have to maybe sometimes let go of thought that I need distractions of music or a YouTube video or some sort of guidance, and just allow myself to again trust my inner guidance and to do what feels better for me at that point in time. So again, that's all about the union of the truth, union with yourself and union with the universe. So yeah, I mean, it hopefully is going to be a lifetime practice for me, and it will never change. And I feel like there's always a gift to be able to give to somebody. So if you like this video and you like what I've put out there, please just give me a comment. And I'm hoping to be able to pass on the gift of Dharma to everyone that I meet who needs it. And those of you who are thinking about trying it, do not ever let that thought go. Even if it's not the right time for you right now, that's okay. But just have the back of your thought that, Vipassana, it is definitely a very good technique if you struggle to find many ways to help you with dealing with negative mindset or dealing with negative behavior patterns, because it really digs deep into the truth of who you really are. Like I said, it's not sectarian, it's non-religious, although again it has its roots in Buddhism and it was taught by the Buddha. Is by no means try to convert anybody into something else or into another religion at all. I mean, Buddha actually did not have any intention to turn what he experienced in his teachings into a sect. So he just wanted to be able to help people, and I feel that this is a good way to spread the word and to plant the seed, for those who needed the guidance. So yeah, well, those of you who want to apply for Vipassana, good luck in your journey. And the next video, I'm going to give you just a few tips about just a few main tips like from my journey. And if you got any more questions, you're more than happy to message me directly or email me with the email below in the description of the box. All right. Okay. Well, here's life to equanimity. Okay, so this video is to give you some tips about the Vipassana course. So if you are looking to go on the course, or if you're thinking about going on the course, here are my 7 tips which I found could have been quite useful and hopefully give you a better decision making pointers. So the first one, give it a try. It's best to put down any preconceived ideas, any rigid expectations. It is also very compatible with all religions, actually, despite certain theories are rooted in the Buddhist tradition. However, it does not try to convert anybody, but it does increase your understanding and learning about this technique, which is purely scientific and is purely based on your own experience. So what is true for one person may not be true for the other person. So it's all purely based on personal experiences throughout the meditation. And like I said, so it's your own truth. So it doesn't try to force any ideologies or force any situations down you, which you have to adhere to rigidly, apart from, of course, a timetable. But yeah, so like I said, it's it's the only thing I can explain as much as I can. You can read about it as much as you can, but the only way to really learn is through experience. Number 2, so certain medical and mental restrictions. So the medical side, and I found them actually quite accommodating with medical needs, but obviously they're not medical professionals. So if you do need specialist care throughout the time at the centre, they will not be able to properly accommodate that. They do also, before you so when you register for the course, when you try to fill out an application, they do ask you a series of questions about your medical and mental health. So yeah, so that way you can sort of gauge on what's the outcome of it. So once you send that off, somebody will read it and they would evaluate it, maybe ask you more questions about it. So I mean, generically, those little niggles probably not going to be that significant. But if you do have like serious medical needs, then definitely make them aware. With the mental side, so there will be some questions that you'll be asked about your mental health. Again, the whole experience is run by volunteers, so they're not able to accommodate complex mental needs. And for any alcoholics or addicts, you will need to be at least 3 months clean prior to attending. And they will ask you that before you come on the course. When I filled it out, I did put my depression down. They did kind of take it as say, oh, I've got depression, low mood, and I have to not apply for like a year. But not knowing they're quite mild, I knew generally myself that I was able to cope. So just be mindful of like when you talk about, if you do have any sort of mild depression, low mood, and on a scale of it, I mean, if it's not that important in a way that you can still go about your day-to-day lives, without any problems, then I will probably just leave it. But if you do have, long-term mental health complications, then definitely make them aware. Location. So the UK centres can be quite difficult to get onto, just due to it being very popular. Because as soon as they open up registration on a certain time and day, as soon as you click on the apply link, they would probably more likely to say that the course is full, then you have to be put on the waiting list. So it does get really booked up really quickly. I attended a Canada one just because it's not only so easy to quit, as it's quite far away from home, but also it's a traveling opportunity to experience a different country, and you kind of probably appreciate the experience even more. But the cost, of course, would be a lot more. You have to pay for the flight tickets and spending money, etc. So again, just depending on what your budget allows and what you're looking for in your Vipassana experience. Okay, number 5, be prepared. Although it's best not to have too many preconceived ideas, but it's definitely advisable to be prepared mentally to work very hard and expect that there will be uncomfortable situations that may arise throughout your course. And just remember the law of impermanence, and that every sensation or discomfort that arises will eventually pass away. So once you allow it to pass, you will learn that you will learn a whole new level of experience about yourself, but only if you allow things to be. So, like I said, have some preparation that yes, you will live without your phone, you will live without any music and TVs, and you have to be in silence. So maybe just perhaps maybe just spend a few days like be in that environment to see how you cope. And then once you can actually say, do you know what, having my phone for 10 days isn't that big of a deal, then that's fine. So I can do that on the course. So yeah, just having, just to have some sort of preparation beforehand will help you a long way. Number 5, simplicity. It is tempting to take a lot of things with you on the course, as you may not be used to having certain discomforts or restrictions, and which you'll be required to observe. But the less stuff you have, the less distractions. It is best to try out the best meditation posture, i.e. a position which you can sit for at least an hour without moving, so that you know the kind of props or bolsters, blankets you need. Now, I'm not sure whether that applies to all centres, but definitely the centre I went on, they do have a lot of bolsters and blankets which you can borrow if you don't have enough. Now, what I found is that I did take a number of different tools which I normally use, props with me, but I found that when it comes to actual sitting there for an hour, those weren't so useful. So it may mean that, okay, you might have to try it out on one sitting during the course, and if it doesn't work, just try to adjust different ways of adapting. Now, you will find that sometimes, you might do really well with one posture, but then the next sitting, something else will come up and that posture doesn't quite work so well. So just be prepared to have a bit of trial and error. They do have chairs available if you really need it. But then try not to rely on chairs and too much support. You might need to have a lot of support to start with if you're not used to sitting upright without any back support, but over the period of the course, then perhaps try to take less and less props away so that you end up becoming a bit more independent from those. So that's probably what I would recommend. Number 6, stretch routines. Now this may not be some people's idea of a tip, but for me it was a good idea to familiarize yourself with a number of stretch routines that you're comfortable in doing in between group sits and low meditation, because you are sitting there for a long time, and if you don't do stretches, and your body will end up seizing up, so you probably will have a very uncomfortable rest of the course, and will affect the rest of your meditation if you're not sort of loosen up a bit. So it can also so we just make your life a lot easier if you have a list of stretch routines. I might just write it down on a piece of paper and familiarize yourself with the sequence, so when it comes to doing them like in your room, you won't have to think about, oh, what do I need to do? Oh, I don't know, I forgot about that stretch routines, are going to just forget about it. So having a list of stretches would really help you to sort of rewind after a full days of hard work of sitting down for long time. And lastly, number 7, have fun. Easier said than done, especially where you have no phone, books, TV, music, or any conversation to entertain yourself with. But remember, every meditation is different. Every day is different. And even the same circular track I was walking on during my breaks, round and round and round again, those walks can be different with every step, with every circuit. So this is going to be the best way to get through the 10 days if you find something to be grateful for in every moment. So have fun with it. Think about what you can learn. And like I said, always congratulate yourself on any small progresses you've made. And don't be too disheartened if you don't make any progress. And like I said, every moment is different. So I hope all these tips help you. And any questions or comments, please put them in the box and I'll be happy to answer them. Right.